no secret. Let's talk about the Agile software development process. So, fantastic university experience that you're having right now. You're really enjoying it. And if you hang out here for 4 years, man, in 4 years you get pretty darn good at doing this stuff, right? You'll be an A #1 going to college person. What happens after roughly 4 years of going to college? You graduate. You screw up, right? You get good at something and then you have to leave it. Oh, swell. You go out and perhaps get a job, right? Now, we've taken a look at some of those job descriptions. Have we seen them say agile, agile, agile in all of them? But whatever the heck that actually means, right? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about exactly what that means. During today's presentation, I'm going to show you exactly what it means to develop software in an agile environment. And I'm going to share with you a ton of vocabulary words. Okay? What's most important to me is that you're exposed to this. If you see these words again, you won't be like, oh, what the hell's that? Right? You'll know what they are, you'll recognize them, okay? And you'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool, I fully understand what that means. And that's the goal of what I want to do here, okay? So it's a process and it's a vocabulary. If you get those two things out of today's presentation, congratulations, you will have gotten exactly what I wanted to get. That make sense? Yeah. All right, here we go. So, let's talk about what this agile thing, remember, agile in the world of software development is a 50-cent word right now. Everybody's gaga over agile. We're agile, we've been agile, and things are much better because we're agile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what is agile? So basically, we talked about what the waterfall was, right, which is the way software development has been done for like about 30 years or so. Agile is different, okay? Basically, agile is used in software development, hopefully, to respond to unpredictability. And what is unpredictable in software development? Customer. Customer is crazy. They wig off. You know, hey, yeah, do this. Oh, wait, don't do this. Oh, hey, do it this way. Right? Customers constantly changing their mind about what they want, and yet at the same point in time, you're supposed to develop software to do it. Oh, swell. That sounds like a winning proposition. All right. So let's talk about Scrum. Okay. Now, Scrum is an agile methodology. It's a way of actually doing the agile process in the software development area. Okay. So Scrum is basically a management framework. It's how you set up and organize your software development team. Okay? Provides a structure of roles, meetings, rules, and what they like to call artifacts, which is basically things, schedules and plans and requirements and stuff like that. Things that you could actually touch. You're responsible for creating and adapting their processes within the framework. And Scrum uses fixed length iterations. Ooh, we've been talking about iterations, right? They call their iterations sprints, trying to indicate they're short, and you work really hard during that short period of time. About 2 weeks or about 30 days long. Remember, 30 days, in terms of what days you actually work, is really what? It's really 20 days. It's really 20 days, right? So you can, I mean, if you're working weekends, then yeah, congratulations, it's 30 days. But assuming that you only work 5 days a week, you really turn out to be about 20 days. Some teams attempt to build a potentially shippable, which means it's properly tested, product increment every iteration. So every 20 days, a Scrum team's cranking out good software. Now, is the software complete as far as the whole project goes? Absolutely not. What did they do? They took a little part of what was actually requested, and then worked on it really hard, and they got that little part all done. So they designed it, they coded it, they tested it, and basically that little part's good to go, right? Now they still have a lot of work to do, but that one small part is now all taken care of. And that's the whole idea behind a Scrum. Pick off a piece, finish it, show it to the customer, make sure the customer's cool with it, and then move on to the next thing. As opposed to the waterfall, which is get all the requirements, do all the work, and then magically present to the customer at the tail end the complete project, right? In which time the customer's completely changed their mind on what they want. Okay, so our waterfall friend, we remember our waterfall. We start with requirements analysis, basically talking to the customer. We do some design, we do some coding, we do some integration, getting it to work with other software systems out there. Do a ton of testing, and we deploy what our customer doesn't want, right? Because so much time has elapsed while you did all that the customer changed their mind, or the situation changed, or the market changed, or the competition changed. Something changed, and more importantly, their requirements changed, right? So what you developed to was incorrect. Okay, so waterfall has some problems, okay? Scrum goal is designed to take, the traditional basis of the waterfall and change them around, okay? Make sure that you get your high-value features first and incorporate feedback sooner. In other words, talk to the customer more often than you do when you're doing waterfall. All right, so what makes Scrum different? We do these things that are called iterations, right? And within an iteration, interesting enough, we basically do the waterfall, right? But basically, we deliver solid code at the end of each iteration, right? It's a little chunk. It's just a small part of the whole thing, but it's completely done at the end of an iteration, okay? All of the development activities, requirements and development and coding and design, pow, they're all in there, but they're tied into a very short period of time. So what do we do during an iteration? Well, this is evaluation, detailed requirements, design analysis, coding, QA, acceptance and testing, and then poof, deployment, right? We're done with it. It's effectively a waterfall done in a very short period of time for a very, very focused bit of code, okay? And this is a great way to do things that require a lot of collaboration and creation of stuff. Okay, on a Scrum team, there's actually 3 different roles. So if you were on a Scrum team, you would be playing one of these roles. Product owner, which sounds really impressive, but it's really some poor person who basically got tagged with doing some extra paperwork, okay? Scrum development team is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's a bunch of software developers who are all going to be working together to produce whatever this thing is, right? And then there's something called a Scrum Master, which is a person who knows a lot about how Scrum sprint projects are supposed to work and doesn't really play a role in the team, but keeps everybody going in the right direction as far as the Scrum goes, right? Yeah, now, interesting thing about Scrum, they're really sensitive about titles. And they're really sensitive about responsibility. And they really want to keep managers out of there. And the reason they want to keep managers out of there is because if you have a manager show up, everybody's behavior changes. Everybody starts sucking up to the manager. And everybody won't speak up if something's wrong because they don't want to look bad to the manager. They'll speak up to their team. Oh my God, I don't know how to do that. Oh my God, it's not working. Oh my God, I'm falling behind. Not a problem with that. But if a manager showed up, they're going to shut up, right? So Scrum is very interested in making sure managers are sort of kept out as much as possible. So let's take a look and see how this all works out. Product owner, okay? Once again, it sounds really impressive. Wow, you're the product owner. It's more of a rotating title. And product owner just means you've signed up to do some additional paperwork, is basically what we're talking about here. So it's one person who's designed to maximize return on investment. What that basically means is make sure that this particular effort is a success. Responsible for the product vision. Hey, what are we working on and why are we working on it? Constantly reprioritizes the product backlog, which is a list of the next thing for you to work on. But if you have a list of things to work on, that's priorities are going to be constantly changing because the customer's mind is constantly, oh wow, we got to get that user interface done. Oh wow, we got to hook into that other system. Oh wow, whatever, right? Customers change their mind, which means that priorities for what you're going to work on next is constantly going to be changing, and this person is responsible for keeping that list up to date. Final arbitrator of requirements questions. We talked about making the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? One of the issues was when do you cut off the crust, right? And we had about 6 different ways to do it. In this particular case, the product owner would be the person who would decide, do you do it before you put the peanut butter and jelly on? Do you make the sandwich and cut it off? They would make those final decisions. Accepts or rejects each product increment so that they've got final say on what you're doing. Decides whether to ship. So determines whether or not you're actually done with what you were going to work on. Decides whether to continue development. Consider stakeholder interest, may continue as may contribute as a team member. Although you may be the product owner, you may be just rolling up your sleeves and cranking out code, just like everybody else. And especially if it's a small team, there's not a lot of people to do this, so you definitely need a lot of people to do things. It has a leadership role. Well, that's true. This is the product, they're making decisions on things. Scrum development team, which is where most of you would end up if you went out and got a software development job in an Agile house. What would you have to do? Cross-functional. What this means is that it's not just software developers, right? You got software testers on there. You got maybe some business people who are talking with the customer, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a real collection of people who come together for this. Self-organizing, self-managing without externally assigned roles. Ooh, that means they're not a boss, right? This is a big deal for Scrum, right? Basically, you get a bunch of smart people together and have them self-organize. And that works well sometimes. If you're hanging out with a bunch of jerks, it doesn't work that well. So this is a huge sort of issue. But there's really nobody telling anybody what to do. Just the group decides what to do. And if it works, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's magical. And if it doesn't, you run into problems. negotiates commitments with the product owner, one sprint at a time, has autonomy regarding how to reach commitments, so the team decides what they're going to do. Intensely collaborative, which means they have to work together. They have to talk to each other. If they have any hope whatsoever of pulling this off. Okay? Most successful when located in one team room, particularly for the first few sprints. A big part of the Scrum methodology is everybody's working side by side. You can't have half the team in India, you can't have half the team in California, you can't have half the team in Florida. Everybody's got to be working side by side because it's that kind of cross communication. It's the talks in the hall, it's the talks at lunch. That's what helps the project be a success. Most successful is long-term, full-time membership. Okay, so if I'm going to do a sprint, I have a group of people on it. That's fantastic. The next time I do a sprint, remember when I peel off the next section of code and go to work on it, it's best if it's the same people coming together, right? Because they know each other. They know what they do well, they know what they don't do so well, and they're able to work together much easier than just rediscovering. 7 members is sort of the max. Generally the rule is 5 to 7. Okay? So these are not big teams. Okay? The reason they're kept so small is because, remember, you're trying to get everybody to talk to each other. If you have more than that, they're not going to talk to each other. As a leadership role, they can make their own decisions. And our final person is the Scrum Master. Now remember, the Scrum Master isn't really part of the team. Scrum Master is sort of an overall role, okay? Who's keeping everybody pointing in the right direction and doing the right scrummy things, right? Facilitates the Scrum process, helps resolve any impediments that show up, creates an environment conducive to the team's self-organization. Remember that self-organization is a great idea, but it is hard to do. Empirical data to adjust forecasts, that's great. Shields the team from external interference and distractions. So you're working in your little Scrum team, but you're really part of a larger company. And there is a boss someplace. So the Scrum Master is supposed to hang out and prevent the boss from showing up every 2 days and going, how's it going? How's it going? Is it going to be done? Is it done? Are you getting closer? Any issue? You know, go away. Don't bug the team is basically what's going on there. Enforces time boxes. Time boxes are basically, you're going to limit the amount of time you spend on any particular part of the task. How much time are you going to spend on getting requirements? How much time are you going to spend on design? How much time are you going to spend on code? You set up time boxes and then you adhere to them. Promotes improved engineering practices. Has no management authority over the team. So the Scrum Master is there to provide guidance, but nobody's working for the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master is hopefully there to make sure that everything goes smoothly, and has a leadership role, of course. Everybody. All right. So there's really 4, maybe 5 types of meetings that you will be attending as a member of a Scrum team. Okay. The first one is the sprint planning meeting. Remember, the sprint is roughly, let's say, a 20-day period where you're going to hunker down and do some coding, right? And in the planning meeting, you're going to go ahead and figure out what you're actually going to work on. A daily Scrum, this is an important characteristic of this type of development. Everybody on the team gets together once a day. And generally, just because it's really cool to do, this is what we call a stand-up meeting, no chairs. And the reason it's a stand-up meeting is because you want it to be as short as possible. People are standing, they're uncomfortable, they won't hang around, right? But basically everybody gets together, answers a few questions, and then goes away. And what happens is you get to hear what everybody else who's working on the same thing as you, what they're doing, and you go, wait, I'm doing that. Oh, wait, I've got an answer for that, for stuff like that. When the whole sprint is done, there's a sprint review meeting, and basically this is where everybody comes together and you say, this is what we created. And you actually show the end result of the sprint. And it's actually a real piece of code you show. It's not a design or a plan or a sketch. It's actually really the real code. You show it to the people on the team, and potentially you also show it to the owner, the person who's asked for it, right? We've made some progress, here's what it looks like, and we go on from there. And then there's this sprint retrospective meeting. And this is one of those ones where you take a step back and you go, wow, how'd that sprint turn out? What worked well? What didn't work so well? What could we do the next time we do a sprint that'll make things a little bit better? And that content gets fed into that. There's also what's called a backlog refinement meeting, and this is an additional type of meeting where during the sprint while it's going on, the people on the team help to refine that backlog. Remember, the backlog is simply a list of stuff you're not working on yet, right? But that has to be kept up to date. So when you go back to it to figure out what you need to work on next, it's organized, it's in order, and you've got your priorities all sorted out. Okay. So let's take a look into what we got here. This is a sprint planning meeting. So you have your product backlog, which is simply a list of the requirements that you've not yet done. Okay? Here you can see they have small, medium, large, medium, extra large, extra large. So they've already gone ahead and done a very, very high level estimate for what's going on there. Okay? So now what you do is you pull off, in this particular case, the top 4. Because remember, these are sorted by priority. Priority going up, the top 4 are the most highest priority. You push them over here. This is now your sprint backlog. Your sprint backlog is what you're going to work on during this particular sprint. Now these are relatively high-level requirements. Okay? Create user logon process. Well, that's cool. But it turns out that there's a bunch of things that you have to do to implement this, right? So you can further break it down. Now, the maximum allotted time for planning a 30-day sprint is 8 hours, which is effectively basically 1 working day, right? And the time box is set up to say, listen, you could kill a week planning what you're going to work on next. I have a suggestion, you have a suggestion, they have a suggestion. Well, let's see what it is, let's prioritize, screw that. What they're doing is they're saying, you got 8 hours, get it done. Okay, and that's what the concept of a time box is. And if everybody knows you have to have it done in 8 hours, are they going to make decisions a little bit quicker? That's the whole purpose behind it. But you know, we're doing this sprint thing, we don't have a ton of time to spend on this. I'm going to give you 8 hours, figure out what you're going to do in 8 hours, and then bam, then we're moving on. Right? And remember, the Scrum Master might be watching over your shoulder, making sure that you actually get it done in 8 hours. Cool. So that's what you do in a sprint planning meeting. You identify what the team's going to work on, break it up into the subtasks, and poof, you're off and running. Okay. Daily Scrum and sprint execution, every day at the same time and place, the Scrum team comes together and they spend 15 minutes, which isn't very long. Remember, you only have 5, maybe 7 people on this team. Okay? Each team member summarizes what he did the previous day, what he's going to do today, and what issues he's facing. Okay? So it's a real round-robin type of thing. Scanning up the daily Scrum keeps it short. That's why there's no chairs. Okay? Plus, it's really cool. Topics that require additional attention may be discussed by whomever is interested after everybody has spoken. Okay, so you go around, get everybody's input. If there's some sort of big issue that has to be resolved, that's great, but talk about it after everybody's going around. During sprint execution, it's common to discover additional tasks. Oh, customer wants us to do what? To achieve the sprint goals. This is an impediment caused by issues beyond the team's control are considered to be organizational impediments. So things that show up that are going to cause us problems, we give them a name and stick them off in the back, and we're going to deal with them offline. It's always useful for the product owner to attend the daily Scrum, but then you also have to be careful because the product owner is like a manager or something like that. It starts to change the chemistry of what happens when the team gets together. Okay, so that's one type of meeting. Another type of meeting is that backlog refinement meeting that we talked about, right? Most product backlog items, PBIs, initially mean refinement because they're way too big, right? What was it? Make sure that left-hand turn lanes don't cause everybody to wait, and there's no cars that are going to make a left-hand turn. Well, okay, that's good, but we need to get a little bit more information to actually really know that one down. Teams have found it useful to take a little bit of time out of the sprint execution while you're working on sprint to help prepare the product backlog for the next sprint planning meeting, which is when you pick off those requirements that you're going to work on next. In the backlog refinement meeting, the team estimates the amount of effort that it's going to take to implement those other requirements, and other things like that, and large vague items are split and clarified. So if you have a gigantic requirement that's this big, well, you'll never be able to get that done, and you won't be able to get that done in 30 days. So what you do is you start to slice it up into smaller requirements, and those smaller requirements then become something that you can work on in a reasonable amount of time. So this is a secondary type of meeting that can be going on while you're doing your other Scrum meetings. Sprint review meeting. Bam! You worked on everything for 20 days. You produce beautiful, wonderful code, and now you have one of these meetings. What do you do here? When the sprint's done, you have a sprint review meeting. Fantastic. And you're going to demonstrate what you created. Okay? You'll show it to the product owner and anybody else who gives a darn about it. Meetings should feature a live demonstration, not a report. So you say you're done, right? Well, show me. After the demonstration, the product owner reviews the commitments made at the sprint planning meeting and declares whether or not which items he now considers to be done. So you show it, but ultimately now it goes back to the product owner to say, yes, you delivered what you promised to work, or no, back you go. You're not done. That's not complete. Okay? Software item that is merely code complete, which means you wrote the code, isn't good enough. You also have to have tested it. You probably also have to prove that you've tested it, right? If you've done those, then perhaps the product owner will accept it, and incomplete items are returned to the product backlog, right? that big hunk of unfinished stuff, and perhaps it'll be worked on during the next sprint. This is an opportunity for your product owners to show up and see what you've done. It also gives them a chance to see the code that you've actually created, and they can say, yes, that's still what we'd like you to do, or they can say, no, we've changed our mind. Now this is what we want to have. So that's all good stuff. Sprint retrospective meeting. Okay, this is the last type of meeting that we have. So this is, sprint's all done. You've wrapped it up, you've shown the customer, let's say, happy with what you did, fantastic. Now the sprint retrospective meeting is, listen, we're going to do another one of these sprints. Question, is there anything that we should do different during this next sprint that would make things more efficient, make things turn out better? So each sprint ends with a retrospective, the team reflects on its own progress. Can I be a little careful here? Because this is where all the ugly stuff comes out. She didn't tell me what I needed to know, when I needed to know. Well, he wasn't talking to me because I parked in his parking spot, and it's just all that crap comes out, right? Okay, so that's when you lay it all on the table, but you do have to be very careful. And you have to be very careful perhaps that managers aren't here, because if all the ugly stuff's coming out, people don't want to look bad in front of their manager. They might not have a problem looking bad in front of their coworkers and peers, because everybody knows what's going on, right? But they don't want to look bad in front of their manager. And this is your opportunity to make your sprint team better the next time you do the next sprint. So, this brings up an interesting point. Perhaps we should all attend a daily Scrum meeting. Would you like to go to a Scrum meeting? There's only one answer. Yes, you would. So in the front of the room, could I see Candice Torres, Ashley Cheney, Paul Cipolla, Tristan Key, and Brian Chanami. Candice, you are number one. Please put that on your shoulder so the whole class can see it. Ashley, you are number two. Put it on your shoulder. Paul, shoulder. Tristan, shoulder. Skip 4. No, I'm just dynamic that way. Thank you very much. Brian, shoulder. Team number 1. Team number 2. 3. Oh, this is your script. Wait, you're not 3. You're 5. How'd you get over there, 5? 3, 4. All right. You have been invited to come to this daily Scrum and Sprint execution meeting. Shh. Don't interrupt them. Team member number 1. You break it, you buy it, but whatever. We're all flexible on that one. Team member 1, can you tell me what you worked on last week?
I spent 3 days this week getting my new workstation set up and configured correctly. After that, I located the PayPal with Visa and MasterCard and Pay with Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal user story and reviewed it. I have now started to create a design.
Fantastic. And what will you be working on this week?
I'm going to complete my design for Pay with Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal user story. Then I'll code it, and I'm hoping to get getting 50% of coding done this week.
I like your vernacular. That's fantastic. And have you run into any problems?
I'm not sure where to get the documentation on what kind of interface I'm going to have to create in order to connect my code with the identify verification applications with MasterCard and Visa.
Would anybody else like to speak up now? Look at the bottom of your sheet.
Okay.
Somebody says the number 5 says. Number 1 says. Who has it?
Oh, okay. Our last project was an online ordering system for concert tickets. We had to interface with MC/Visa for that project. I still have that code. I'll send it to you. All that you have to change is what will be the authentication codes.
Well, how handy. How great that we're having this coordination meeting. Team member number 2, can you tell me what you worked on last week?
Okay, last week I completed my design for the order trip DVD user story. I started and completed my coding of this week. What I'll be doing this week I'm going to be focusing on testing my order trip DVD code. I'm hoping to have updated existing test cases to test the new functionality that I've added. With this luck, I'll be able to be done by the end of the week.
Fantastic. And what will you be working on?
That was.
You did both of them, didn't you?
Yeah.
Have you run into any problems?
The third-party firm that I'll be creating the DVDs does not have an online system for us to interface to. This means I'm going to have to go back to the customer and get the requirements for what the order form that we'll be sending to them be sold for.
Curses! That seems like that will slow us down. If only there was some way to fix that problem.
Have you considered automating the system to send them a fax? I think that we already have the ability to send a fax built in. All you need to do is write the phone number to send it to.
I have a bunch of changes that the customer just dropped.
Stop!
I was early.
You were too early.
Early.
I'll give you a chance though. Just hold on. Team member number 3, what did you work on last week?
I completed 50% of my coding of the review story, review stay user story. This week, I am going to complete the coding of the review stay user story, and then I'll get started on the testing of this new code. At the same time, I'll be starting my design of order room service and user story.
Fantastic. Have you run into any problems?
Yeah, I heard a rumor that the customer discovered another site that has the review stay feature that he really likes. I'm going to send him an email and see if I can get a link to it. Depending on how different it is from what I've already designed, I may end up going back and changing my design and then changing my code.
I have a bunch of changes that the customer just dropped off. I can take a look and see if any of them have to do with the review stay feature, and I'll send you the email with them if I find it.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Team number 4, what did you work on last week?
I just started the choose a view user story. I'm not sure how much effort is going to be required to get this integrated into the code that has already been created. This week, I'm going to have to go back and take a look at the work that's already been done in order to answer this question. I'm hoping to complete my design for this user story.
Fantastic. Have you run into any problems?
I'm not sure where to start looking in our existing code to find out about how my new piece of code can be integrated with it.
Gotcha. That's a bummer.
Well, I think that you're going to want to interface to some code that I've written. Talk to me afterwards and I'll show you what I mean.
Hot damn. That was fantastic. We're making progress there. And team member number 5, what did you work on last week?
I'm just starting on the support 3,000 users user story. I've reached out to the hosting firm that will be providing the computers, and I scheduled a meeting with them for this week.
That is fantastic. And is that what you're going to be working on this week?
For this week, I'm preparing questions that I'll be asking during my meeting with the hosting company based on the meeting. I'm going to create a system architecture diagram that should support this loading, and I'll then circulate it within the team to get everyone's feedback.
That is fantastic. Have you run into any problems during your development efforts?
I've never designed a system that handles so many concurrent users, so I'm not quite sure what questions I should be asking the hosting company.
I created an online build page system 2 years ago, and I got some experience with what questions you need to ask. Talk with me after this and I'll share what I know.
Fantastic. Round of applause for our Scrum meeting players. So natural. So fantastic. Thank you. So there you go. You just attended your very first Scrum planning meeting. How do you feel now? Experienced developers, right?
Oh, yeah.
That means at some point in time in the future when you attend one of these meetings, it won't be your first, will it? You'll be like, yeah, I've done this before. No big deal, right? All right, that's what we're going for. All right, backlog grooming. What is this backlog grooming stuff? Remember, backlog is simply the stuff you haven't done. It's a list of all the requirements that you've not done. Grooming talks about taking what we like to call oversized product backlog items, PBIs, but we call them epics because they're so freaking huge, right? And way too big for our little team to work on. So what we do is we take this and then we chop. We chop it up into smaller, manageable requirements. Once again, they have to fit within our 20-day sprint window, right? Arguably, most customers aren't going to use all the functionality in a requirement, okay? So what we really want to do is talk to the customer and say, hey, what part of this requirement is most important to you, okay? And let's make sure that we get the most valuable stuff done first. Makes sense, right? Okay, Scrum artifacts. Artifacts is just a fancy way of saying documentation. Okay? Okay, first one is called product backlog. We've talked about this already. Remember, this is the product backlog. We have it actually sorted in a priority order. Most important stuff at the top, lesser important stuff at the bottom. What's interesting is stuff at the top also has more granularity. In other words, we understand what has to be done better. Down here, I sort of know what you want. Up here, I know exactly what you want, right? Okay? Only one item at a time, obviously, can be at the top of it. Force ranked, okay, visible to all stakeholders. Anybody can add more stuff to this. It's not some sort of sacred cow, right? If somebody thinks of something, or somebody reads the customer requirement and goes, wow, we have to remember to do that, hey, show up and slap another one on, okay? Not a big deal whatsoever. Constantly reprioritized by the product owner. Remember, the customer's going to be changing, the project's going to be changing. If you have the title of product owner, you have to constantly be taking a look at this and reprioritizing it, and maintain during the backlog refinement meeting. All right, what else we got here? Product backlog item, a PBI. So this is just one item off of that list, right? So it's got a title, got some sort of acceptance criteria. How will we know when it's done? We've done some sort of overall estimate. We identified it as being small. Okay, it's more the how than the, more the what than the how, okay? User story, so we're talking about English here. We're talking about, remember, user stories are written in whose language? Your language or customer's language, exactly right. Product-wide definition of done, okay? Item specific, effort estimate by the team. Effort is roughly 2 to 3 people, 2 to 3 days. Okay, so that's like a rule of thumb. This little bugger's not that big, right? So if it's 3 people for 3 days, you're talking about roughly 6 man-days worth of effort, right? Basically, it's sort of a week worth of effort. So if you have something that's this big, you have to scope it down to roughly about a week's worth of effort, and then you know you're done. That's it, right? Scrum artifacts, the sprint backlog. Okay, so you've decided to do a sprint. These are all the committed backlog items. These 4 things are the 4 things you're going to get done during the sprint. Fantastic. These are all the little subtasks that these break into. Fantastic, that's wonderful, that's great. These are in progress and these are completed, okay? With a little left, all of these are going to move over to there in the next 20 days. Fantastic, that's wonderful. Committed PBIs, commitments fixed during sprint execution. Anything else? You're always going to discover new stuff, okay? Not a big deal whatsoever. You don't add it here, you basically put it back on the master list. Everybody gets to see this. Potentially put this up on a big board in the work area so everybody can see where the project is currently at. And you talk about this during the daily Scrum meeting, right? Because that meeting where everybody's getting together and talking about where they're at and what they're doing, stuff like that, they're talking about these things and everybody's working to move it from left to right. Got it? Sprint task. Okay, down to a very specific thing. How are you going to get your PBIs? Requires 1 day or less of work. So these are really pretty small, granular pieces of software development that are going to be done here. Remaining effort is re-estimated daily, typically in hours. Okay? As you learn more, you'll go back and refine your estimates and stuff like that. One person may volunteer to be primarily responsible for this task, and it's owned by the entire team. Collaboration is anticipated. So this stuff is out there. It's not necessarily getting assigned to anybody. It's sort of like when you complete one, you pick up another one. When you complete one, you pick up another one, right? We're all in this together. It's all of our commit to get this stuff done, right? So if you're working on that, then you work on that, and he'll work on that, right? Pick it up, run with it, get it done, and at the end of the sprint, hopefully everything will be taken care of because we all got it done. Sprint burn down chart. Basically, this is number of hours of effort left. Notice that it started here at about 150, and then it shot up to like 300. What the heck? What happened is people started working on stuff, and they realized that their initial estimates were wrong. Whoa, that's going to be a lot harder than I originally thought. But that's cool. They went back and re-estimated. Okay? So whoever's keeping track of the chart said, okay, great. I understand. It's more effort. Let's keep track of that. And then as people make progress and they check things off, hopefully you get down to eventually 0 by the end of the 20 days, right? Because then you got all your stuff done. Okay? There's some challenges with this particular chart. Is if managers get their hold on the chart, they're like, no! This is horrible! And it's like, stop this, stuff happens. We're all cool with this. We're still planning on getting it done and stuff like that. We're just sort of tracking where we're at. So there's some controversy about burn down charts, whether or not they should or should not be used. Product release burn down chart. This is sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, sprint 5. Remember, our overall goal is not to have sprints, but sprints are steps as we work towards producing a final product, right? And so the thought is if this is where I end up with my final product, this is how I'm actually going to get there. And this is actually what I was planning on working on, and this is all the new requirements that are showing up. The thought on the new requirements is hopefully, as you get farther along in the process, there will be fewer new requirements. The customer will become more and more comfortable with what they're going to get, and they stop hitting you with so many new requirements. But there will be a lot of new requirements right off the bat. Scaling, okay, so if you got, 5 or 7 people working on something and you fall behind, it's tempting to add more people to the team to get work done faster. And the answer is don't do it. Making your development team larger doesn't make it any faster, because communication, which is the key to a successful team, becomes a heck of a lot harder when you have more people involved, right? Scaling, this is one approach to do it. So if you take people and you organize them by their functional group. I'm the security person, I'm the billing person, I'm the ordering person, whatever. If you're those groups of people and you put them together, they all have a shared interest, they have shared knowledge, they can work off of each other, and that actually works out fairly well, but it's not perfect. Scaling is hard to do. Large organizations struggle with the Agile method because it's so sort of free-form and so anti sort of management type of deal, but they do struggle with it. They pretend to do Scrum, but they like to put a layer of management on top of it, which sort of kills the whole Scrum concept there. Scrum Masters, they try to do the best that they can in a large organization, but they really have to sort of rely on each other to try and keep things moving in the forward direction. Team self-organization, remember, if you're on a Scrum team, nobody's really telling you what to do, but you've signed up to complete what's going to get completed during the sprint. So it's the self-organization. So you got to be engaged as opposed to manipulated. So in other words, don't tell me what to do, but I am committed to achieving it. You've got a bunch of challenges, okay? Members have to be committed to short-term goals. Members engage the group's progress. Remember, a lot of what goes on in the Scrum effort is telling people where are you at, where are you at, where are you at, okay? Are we getting closer to where we have to be? Are we getting farther away from where we have to be? Everybody knows everything is sort of the overall Scrum methodology, okay? Everybody can observe each other's contribution. So you slacker, if you're not keeping up your end of the deal, is everybody else on the Scrum team going to know about it? And that's some serious peer pressure right there, right? And hopefully members feel safe to give each other unvarnished feedback. You suck. Your code sucks. You should do a better job. I mean, whatever. You get the gist of it, right? So if something's not working out, hopefully everybody's going to tell you, and hopefully you'll change and correct. When is Scrum appropriate? Scrum's not always the right choice. Okay, and once again, the world's gone a little bit crazy and everybody thinks Agile is the right way to go, but that's not always the case. Look, if you have a super predictable project where the customer gives you requirements and does not change their mind, if it's an old system, the customer's not changing their mind. They've had it for 30 years. They're not going to show up with brand new requirements. Then potentially the waterfall's the way to go. Nice, predictable, you know exactly what it is, you spend the time up front, you deliver a product out the back, life is grand, okay? If you move into this sort of more chaotic thing where the customer's changing their mind, the customer's not 100% certain what they want, that's where Agile seems to fit quite nicely. There is anarchy. Customer completely changes their mind on what they want. Hey, there's nothing you can do about that, right? There's absolutely no way you can deliver software in that environment. And that environment does occasionally. What does Scrum provide? Look, so if you do it correctly, the thought is that you get great code delivered well. Waterfall takes longer to deliver, and you're going to have a lot more technical debt. The problem is companies that say give lip service to Scrum, say, oh yeah, we're going to have Scrum teams and Scrum masters, and then they fall back into doing Waterfall. They end up sort of getting screwed across the board, right? They end up with something, and they generally do deliver software, but the software that they deliver doesn't generally meet their end users' requirements because they didn't fully commit to doing it with Scrum. All right, what we covered today? What is Scrum? So if you hear the word Scrum, you won't be thinking rugby anymore, will you? Now you think, oh yeah, software development methodology. You know who's on a Scrum team? There's three types of people on a Scrum team. They are the
Product owner, Scrum team, and
Scrum Master, exactly. You know about sprint meetings, and you saw one. Some of you participated in one, but you saw an actual sprint meeting. So if you ever see it again, you'll know exactly what it is. And we talked about the Scrum artifacts, all the pieces of paper that go along with it, right? Fantastic, that's great. So what we're going to do next time, project planning, priorities, and something called velocity. That should be sort of interesting.